When you chop a top, you better be ready to cut glass. Today, our expert shows us how it's done on our Ford Resto Mod. Plus, we'll get her outside to meet the fans.
This is Truck Tech, and I love it!
Welcome to Truck Tech. Today, we have two very different makes of truck, Chevy and Ford, in two very distinctive styles of build. And I can say it's been a blast working on both of these classic American pickups.
I agree. And with our 71 C10, we'll jump back on it and we'll get it ready for the street. But for today, we're committed to finishing our 55 F100. At least close to it.
We'll get there. You know, I've actually seen guys abandon projects with chopped roofs halfway through, simply because they couldn't find a piece of glass to fit the windshield opening.
Well, that's no worries for us, because today we've got glass guy Chicago Brian Harding in to custom cut a windshield for us. Now, I know you worked in the glass business for a little while. Have you ever attempted to cut a curved windshield?
You know, I've made plenty of flat laminated windshields for, the 20s and 30s hot rods that have the flat front, but I've never tried to cut down a piece of curved laminated glass.
It doesn't look easy.
I would say not.
But before we get to work, we had a little fun last weekend when we put her in the trailer. We took her down the street to a local car show just to get a few reactions mid-build. The rear fenders, they're original, stretched a couple of inches.
We brushed it on and wiped it kind of like you would a wood stain.
Yeah, it's chopped a little bit, because these trucks, they're weird. They're so tall right there in the cab, and they're shaped awkward too.
Well, it's been a long journey to get to this point, and we're actually really excited to get this thing outside. It's a little bit wet today, but it's just kind of rewarding after you spend all these hours working on a project to see it outside, get people's reaction, step away from the shop a little bit, and put the tools down and get outside.
Beautiful, absolutely stunning, straight, stance right, love the wheels.
Did you recognize what's under the hood?
I did, yeah. I saw the little EcoBoost twin turbo Ford motor, so yeah, that's definitely caught my eye. So big fan of you guys' show and all that, so that was definitely cool. Everybody's got a small block Chevy and stuff, so pretty neat.
It's a little bit different. Everyone's putting Coyote motors in, and I like the V6. You're going to get a little bit of fuel economy and drivability and good horsepower. You'll surprise a few people, I think.
Resto Mod. Nothing wrong with that at all. If you have the bucks to do it, it's very cool. Very, very cool.
These guys have been busting their butts on this, and it looks fantastic. And although it's a little on the not done side, it's okay at showing people what it's going to be, and it looks great.
We've test fired the engine. We know everything works. It's just we're still in the middle of building it. So
yeah,
another month or so we'll be done probably.
Wow, looks way different in there.
I love the clean lines and the clean look, and I love the steel gray and white combination. It's gorgeous and it's simplistic, but it shows elegance and beauty. And a lot of people think older trucks are kind of beefy and out of date, and they don't have, but I think they have the elegance that we have lost in car manufacturing these days, and they have a beauty and craftsmanship that we should look back to and hopefully implement into our vehicles in the future.
Next, how to cut a curved windshield.
We're back on Truck Tech, and we're finally ready to get some glass in our F100. Now, since this is a curved windshield, it's kind of a special task to be able to cut it down and not break anything. So we called glass guy Chicago Brian Harding to come in and help us out. Man, thanks for coming in.
No problem. I'm really excited to get working on this truck.
That's awesome. Now, Brian is well known in the entertainment and film industry, and he's got a pretty cool job. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I work on some TV shows in Chicago, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, some other shows that come to town. And what I do is I work with special effects, and basically they're blowing up windows, they're blowing out windshields, and I take a new piece and I'm there, for take 2. I put a new piece in for take 3 until they get the shot.
That sounds like a pretty cool gig.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, as you guys know, our truck came to us already chopped, and it also came with glass that was already cut down, and, well, it didn't really fit too good.
No. When somebody chops the top on a car, whether it be this truck, an old 50s hot rod, just because you chop it 3 inches doesn't necessarily mean the glass changed 3 inches.
Exactly.
So they took 3 inches off the windshield, and as you can see when we put it in, we could put our hand through it. It was a little short.
Yeah,
so what we need to do is we'll make some new templates, and we'll walk people through how we do that, and we'll get it chopped and get it in.
Awesome, man. Let's do it. I'll try not to break anything.
That's all right. We start by putting the poster board or cardboard on the outside of the pinch weld of the truck. We'll draw with a marker around the inside of the pinch weld. We then add to the template for the pinch weld where the glass is going to rest. In this case, it ended up being 1/4 of an inch. So we added 1/4 of an inch to our daylight size. We trimmed out the pattern. We laid that back in the truck to make sure the glass is going to lay where we want it to. After we're done and we have that set the way we want, we transfer it to the glass. We lay our line on the glass and we're ready to cut. Good to go.
So what do you use to cut the glass with?
We use a glass cutter, and it's a little different than one you would get down the street at your hardware store.
I'm curious, I want to see this thing.
So the kind I use is self-oiling, so this keeps oil on the wheel. The wheel is a diamond wheel, which is what breaks the surface tension of the glass. That gets it to break.
When you start cutting, about how deep does it cut into the glass?
It's very, very minor. All you're doing is breaking the surface tension of the glass.
Okay.
And when we call it, we're running it, which means we're forcing the glass to crack where we ran the glass cutter.
About how much pressure does that take when you're laying down?
It takes a little bit more than you would be with a marker or a pencil when you're writing. There's magic. When I cut the corners off of the glass, it takes away a stress point in the corner, which is what we call a cup. It's where the window in the corner, the curve goes 2 different directions in the corner. So we clip that off to eliminate a stress point for the windshield to crack.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a clean cut too, look at that.
It's all that experience.
It's awesome.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to divide up the area that we're cutting off in 2 sections to make it easier to get the glass to do what I want it to do. Easier to work with and essentially try to avoid the windshield cracking with too much stress. Unfortunately, it's glass, and it doesn't matter if it's flat or curved windows. Glass has a mind of its own. If it decides that it wants to crack, it'll crack. There could be a bubble in the glass, there could be an imperfection in the edge. My success rate as far as curved windshields go, I'm usually about 90% out of all of them that I've cut. And hopefully this isn't one of them that puts me below that average. After I run my cutter, we'll open up the cut, starting at each corner to give the glass a starting and finishing point. You're essentially cracking the glass where I made the cut. We'll flip it over. We're going to make the exact same cut on the backside. When we have it completely run from end to end, I'll put some denatured alcohol on it. The process of doing this is to help melt or soften the laminate between the glass to help me get that cut off the glass. Most cars now have tempered side windows, so when they break, they explode. A windshield, when you get hit by a rock, it cracks. And that laminate in the middle protects you inside the car, essentially keeping you safe from anything that hits the windshield. If I'm cutting on something that's really rare, hard to get, it's a little nerve-wracking because, again, it's glass. So we have a tendency to take a little bit more time and slow it down a little bit to get our cuts right. Now that we have the final piece off the glass, we're going to start with our finishing process. The finishing process of glass is exactly like the finishing process of painting a car. It starts at 40 grit and goes all the way up to 600 grit, and you can even polish it with cork at the end. Once we finish with the 220 grit, we're happy with the shape. We're going to test fit the window in the truck to make sure it still fits. If I need to trim any corners, I need to round any edges, we need to shave down a side because maybe the post moved, we can do that before we're ready to put it in the truck.
The piece is test fit one last time, and then the gasket is installed around the pinch weld just to get it down to size. Remember, the 2-inch chop means a smaller seal around the smaller glass. Once it's cut, Brian will glue it back together, install it on the windshield, and thread in the windshield rope. Then the whole thing is installed from the outside in.
You follow me that way?
Removing the rope forces the gasket out over the pinch weld. And a little ammonia-free cleaner helps massage the gasket in place. You got it, man. It's in.
Awesome.
Looks good. Rubber seated well everywhere. Oh yeah. Here we go.
Ahead, Jeremy tries his hand.
All right, we've got the windshield in on the F100 after Brian Harding, owner of Glass Guy Chicago, cut about 2.5 inches out of a factory piece to accommodate our chop. And while he was doing that, I figured out a way to get our door glass to work. If you'll remember, several hands touched this truck before LT and I took it over. And it looks like they attempted to run power windows, but after looking around the shop, about half the parts were missing. Now, you would think it would be easier having half the work already done for you, but for me, it's the opposite. I would much rather start a project than try to finish someone else's. But what are you going to do? From the factory, our F100 door glass was actually 2 pieces, a vent window up front and a main glass behind it. Now, we want to get rid of all that and install a 1-piece glass kit. It's a much cleaner look and a very popular hot rodder upgrade. Problem is, if you do a search online for a 55 F100 1-piece glass kit, you won't find many options. So we decided to make our own, and it's pretty simple to do. Now, for the front channel, where we want the window to guide up and down, I'm actually using a factory piece that divided the vent glass and the main glass. Now, for the channel that runs around the door, we picked up some universal stuff and bent it to shape. As it runs down the door, it runs into the factory channel. Now, for the regulator and the lift channel, also factory parts from the F100. Now, the only problem we ran into when we got it in the door is that the front channel kicked in a little too much, which means the glass would have laid against the regulator, probably been impossible to roll up and down, and wouldn't take much to shatter it. So, the bracket that mounts to the door, I cut it in half and extended it 1 inch. That'll line everything up so the window will roll up and down nicely. So, for a 1-piece window kit, we were able to use all factory parts we had laying around the shop. All we need to do now is cut a little glass. First, Brian will take care of the back window glass on the Ford using the same process as the windshield. A cardboard template is used for the pattern. Then he'll carefully use his glass cutter to run multiple lines on both sides to get the piece down to a manageable size. If he cut right along the template lines to start, there's a better chance for his cuts to run the wrong way, which for any glass guy is a disaster. Brian's used to the pressure.
All right, here we go.
Our team brought him in about 4 years back to cut pane on a chopped 51 Hudson Hornet coupe. The wicked curve was no match for the shy boy's talent.
And that's how you cut a curved windshield.
And last year, the 2-piece on this 49 Ford was less of a pain, but still required the steady hand needed to get the job done right. Since the back window of our Ford is flat, it's way easier to cut than the curved windshield. Again, straight line cuts will get it to size. And then once the edges are trimmed, Brian will grind and seam the edges of the back glass to match the template perfectly. With the gasket in place, the window installs from the inside out, and no glue or clips hold it in place. The gasket lifts over the outside pinch weld, making it permanently secure. And now we can move on to cutting door glass. You make this glass stuff look pretty easy.
Why don't you give it a try?
Oh, crap. How much glass did you bring?
We got plenty.
So I can break one and we're good.
You can break one, we're good.
Okay. All right.
So let's start. Let's take this corner off.
Okay. Let's see.
It's kind of like pinstriping.
It doesn't matter that I'm a little shaky?
Nah, you're good.
I pull straight lines when I pinstripe.
That's perfect.
Here we go. Get on there.
Just slow and steady. So now let's move it off the table so we can open up our cut. Take your hand and you're going to force this down to open that up.
Just a little pressure?
Just a little pressure, okay. Not a lot of pressure. So
you got, did that open up?
Yep.
I didn't see it.
I saw it shoot to there. So you just kind of keep going and you're all the way to this side.
Okay, cool. Now I'll flip it over and make the second cut along the same line. Then pull down to get your run.
Good news is
it went the other way.
All the cracks went the good way. So now we should be loose. Now,
man, you got me sweating over here. I've only made one cut.
It's not
soaking wet.
Not as easy as it looks, is it?
Well, now I know what not to do.
Close.
I'll just follow the same process on all the other cuts. Yeah, it's fun to try something new, but in the 40 minutes it took me to cut this one door glass, well, as Brian just said, that cracked me up. I think I'll leave the glass cutting to the experts. Well, that about does it. How do you think I did?
This will be the moment of truth.
Check it out.
I'd say you did pretty good.
That's not too bad. Well, that comes from having a good teacher, right?
I appreciate that.
Well, we really want to thank Glass Guy Chicago, Brian Harding, for coming in and cutting all the glass for our F100. The truck looks awesome, and man, hope to have you back again sometime.
I'm a phone call away.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Next, pedal power.
One of the more important things we have left to install on our Ford are the pedals. Originally, they would be mounted on the frame below the floorboard, but there's a lot of things that we have changed since 1955 that will prevent us from using the original style pedals. For one, this truck was originally equipped with four-wheel drum brakes, and we've swapped those out for four-wheel discs. So the brake master cylinder will no longer work for us. And number two, the transmission we installed uses a hydraulic throwout bearing instead of a mechanical linkage. So we'd have to do a little bit of fabrication to get those two to adapt together. Now, luckily for us, there's a lot of options on the aftermarket that help us upgrade brakes on these classic American trucks. Take our C10, for example. It's a heavy, full-size truck with a big power plant. So to go along with that, we need a lot of stopping power. So we installed a Hydro Boost. It mounts in the truck between the master cylinder and the brake pedal and uses hydraulic pressure from the power steering system. The fluid starts at the pump and runs first to the Hydro Boost. It then goes back down to the steering gearbox and then returns to the pump. Now, this braking system also uses a proportioning valve. This sends more braking pressure to the front wheels than it does to the rear, so you don't lock them up under heavy braking conditions. Hydro Boost brakes work very well. You get amazing stopping power with very little pedal effort. But unfortunately for us, that 3.5 EcoBoost just doesn't have a place to mount a power steering pump, so that option's out the window. We could, however, mount a vacuum booster. These things have been around for decades, and instead of power steering fluid, they use your engine's vacuum to provide the assistance. Now, these things are kind of bulky. It's often hard to find a place to mount them properly on the firewall. Not only that, they're pretty ugly to look at, even if they are chrome-plated. So, we went to Summit Racing and picked up a pair of these pedal and master cylinder assemblies. And after talking to the manufacturer, we decided to run these without any boosters at all. By properly sizing the master cylinders at 0.88 bore for the front and 0.81 on the rear, we'll have amazing stopping power. And instead of a proportioning valve, this pedal includes a balance bar. This allows us to adjust the bias of the brakes from front to rear, once again, so we don't lock up the back tires under heavy braking. For the clutch pedal, we chose a separate one so we can space it out between the steering column. And this one runs a 0.75 bore, slightly smaller than the rest. The cool thing about this style of brake pedal is you can actually use a remote fluid reservoir, or you can mount it directly to the master cylinder like we're going to do. And the first thing we're going to do is make some holes in Jeremy's brand new paint job. Ha! That makes me happy. This setup provides a lot more flexibility in where you place the pedal assemblies, especially since you don't have to worry about clearance for a bulky vacuum booster. Luckily, there is a reinforcement bar running underneath the dashboard, and all I have to do is make two short braces to attach to the front of the dash. I'll make some larger holes in the firewall and deburr the edges, hang the pedal assembly, mount the master cylinders, and tighten it all down to drill the last two holes. Throw on the boot and thread the rods into the balance bar. And a foot pad is the icing on the cake.
Do the same thing with a clutch pedal, we'll be good to go.
Well, LT, it looks like we can mark a couple of more things off of this list. I got the bed bolted together, you got the brake pedal in, and we've made a pretty good dent in this list, and we really don't have a lot left.
You know, there's been a lot of late nights and a lot of behind-the-scenes work to get the truck where it is today. And the next time you guys see it, we'll be out on the road listening to those turbos spool up.
Man, I can't wait to drive it, but for today, let's get out of here.